Hello, everyone. I am delighted today to be a part of the DLC club and talk on a very interesting subject. Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Ash. That is what I'm fondly called my friends, and I've worked with global organizations such as Athena Education, BMA International, ISS, RSB, Kumau, SKF, brief while with Ernst& Young. Have lived and worked a large part of my life in Asia Pacific and the Middle East. I also happen to be a certified coach in personality psychology, emotional intelligence, and career anchoring. I've been working with tools underneath these various fundamentals for a long period of time. So I've acquired some interesting insights which I'll be using while I discuss the subject of today. Outside my work life, I'm associated with the world's leading not-for-profit coaching firm like Everwise. So I spend a lot of time with young leaders who are trying to emerge and become, in a senior role in their organizations. So I coach them and I spend a lot of time out of my whatever limited free time I'm available with. And last but not the least, a couple of years back, I wrote a book called Being Great, Leadership and Organizational Cultures. It got published on Amazon worldwide and available in 7 countries. The book was reviewed by Dave Ulrich and Marshall Goldsmith. It received a lot of interesting reviews. And last, I recently started my YouTube channel. So I am a very young YouTuber, you can say, and my YouTube channel's name is Lighthouse with Ash. I started it around 40 days back, and it has acquired a good enough number of subscribers, around 18,000 plus we are touching right now. So I'm hoping for it to grow, for me to really drive the meaning to insight of people, culture, and business, because that's what I'm always excited about contributing to. Thank you very much. And over to my next panels to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Ash. I think very interesting path that you have decided and defined for yourself, and we wish that you grow with every single day. Really happy to be part of this DLC workshop, and more than that, excited because the topic that Ash probably has suggested and we finally picked it up for the discussion is culture and vision. Yes, that's the core, and a lot has to be done in this regard, because the definition for every individual or organization probably is different when we define culture. And I have been associated with the Signex or Datamatics family for the last 18 years. And I think it has played a pivotal role in ensuring that I stay with the organization. The top 3 pillars, if I would say, one would be definitely the culture of the organization, how we treat people, and why employees stay with a particular company for 15 years, 16 years. So really, really happy to be part of this panel and share the stage with Ash and Shishir, and looking forward to discuss more on this pertinent subject, which I'm sure will help everybody who is attending this. Thank you so much. Over to you, Shishir.
Thank you, Ankita. Before I start my intro, I would just definitely say, I'm so honored to be part of, this DLC HR panel discussion, and more so, learning from Ash and Dr. Ankita from you. You've been an industry veteran, and I feel that I'm still going to learn quite a lot from this and pick up some while I'm going to share my thoughts. But I'm definitely looking forward to learn from my other panelists. Little bit about me. Originally I'm obviously from India, but last 18 or 20 years I have worked with different organizations, starting from FMCG to automobile manufacturing to a social media like LinkedIn or Uber in the past. Last 5 years I have been in Thailand, Bangkok, based here. A company called E-commerce Strategia. We are an e-commerce enabler organization. We bring brands from offline to online. So it's been 5 years with the organization here. Very, very interesting topic that Ash recommended, and I think it's while we were before this whole discussion started, we were just chatting about this, that how it is important. While everybody thinks it is important, but how much is being done is very little. And I would love to sort of share my thoughts and learn from everybody else here. What we can do to sort of inculcate some of these practices or the thoughts that we're going to discuss here in the real world in terms of the organization. So warm welcome to everyone, and would love to discuss and take it from here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Shishir. Thank you very much, Dr. Ankita. With your permission, I'm just taking the lead to initiate the dialogue and initiate the discussion. And I think this journey about culture in my life, at least, goes back to as early as 2002, when I started my leadership journey with SKF. And when I say that, it's very interesting because SKF at that time was going through a very tough transition. And we were evolving with a new vision. We were evolving with a new value set. We were evolving with a new mission. And in some of the countries, including in India at that time, I was based in India at that time, we were not doing too well. And I remember very clearly at that stage, a lot of our focused agenda and interventions were aimed at getting the vision implemented, but the vehicle we chose to drive it was culture. And I think that's where this whole thought emerged, that how powerful is this one thing which is totally invisible, because vision is on the walls of the organization, values is on the walls of the organization, mission is on the doors and walls of the organization, but you never see something written about the culture. Most often it's a subset in the definition of what a vision is, what a value is, or what a mission is. And I realized that this is actually more powerful than even these three elements that keep talking about it. Because when I look back in the journey of around 2 decades, I realized that there are 6 things which go on to contribute to culture. And I think it's created through people, your employees, your customers contribute to your culture, your suppliers, your shareholders contribute to your culture. I think the brand that you represent, how much respect it gets in the market, what reputation it gets in the market, what's its image, that contributes to your culture. Your formal and informal organization structure, because I always believe there is always an informal organization structure also in the organization. There are people who generally, and I'm sure Dr. Ankita would have noticed it in many parts, there are a lot of people who don't have any team, but they're fairly important and their behaviors are very important for the organization. Then the leadership and management styles of the people who are there in the organization. How the business decision-making style of the organization, that contributes a lot to the culture. And last but not the least, the policies, the processes, the systems that the organization follows are also very strongly embedding the culture in the organization. And I think when I look back, amongst all these 6 elements, I think the most powerful element I personally felt always was the leaders. And why so? Because I think leaders drive a lot through the way they behave. It's about their actions and behaviors that contributes to culture. It's about what they pay attention to and what they're appreciating and what they're punishing for, what they're shunning, what they are actually criticizing for, and what are they allocating their time and resources to. Because knowingly, unknowingly, leaders are always driving their culture ahead. And I think that got described in the book that I mentioned about being great leadership and organization cultures. And I gave a very interesting metaphor. Actually, Dave Ulrich loved that metaphor, and he actually referred that metaphor back to me on email. And he said, this is a very interesting metaphor that you've used. So I'm going to quickly talk about that metaphor. So what I said, that in most of the world that you'll see, organizations can be defined as a pyramid. Because there is someone at the top as a thought leader, someone who created the idea, someone who set the team in place, who hired all the other leaders to come in. And these are the people who are the thought think tank, and they are the ones who are driving the organization forward. Now, whatever their actions and behaviors are getting driven through people below them, and so on and so forth until the last mile. So in this pyramid, there is a circle, and imagine a sphere in this pyramid. And the sphere is what I called as the culture ball. And I said, culture ball is the complete sum total of energy and efforts of everyone inside this pyramid. Knowingly, unknowingly, this is the cumulative sum total of all the energies and efforts of this organization put together, knowingly, unknowingly. And that's the important part. When a culture and vision is in synergy, what would happen is that this culture ball starts expanding. And when the culture ball starts expanding, it is a very positive movement. The vision starts to move as well. And the culture is growing and the vision is growing. The culture is growing, the vision is growing. So you suddenly realize that the culture is pushing the organization towards excellence. The culture is pushing the organization towards expansion. And the people's efforts, the efforts of the leaders of the organization, is in complete alignment with what they state is the vision of the organization. So that's an ideal situation of what I described in my book as the ideal situation of a culture and vision relation. The second situation that I spoke of in my book was the actual challenge situation. And what happens in a challenge situation is the same pyramid, same organizational pyramid. Now, typically what happens is, in this case, what has happened, the culture is completely misaligned. They are stating that they want to be closer to customer, but their people are extremely anti-customer. Typically you would see a classic example was in India. I wouldn't like to take name. It recently got acquired. In the aviation space, we have a lot of such examples. And there was a young organization and maybe several decades old organization. And that several decades old organization is no longer in place. It's been privatized. So that organization had everything going for it. It had the infrastructure, the resources, I think the best of the class of air fleet, the best of the planes, etc. But the only thing that was missing in that organization was culture. Because the culture was not at all bothered about customer. The culture was not at all bothered about service. On the other hand, a young organization in aviation was there, which didn't have most of these things, which was very supportive of the old organization. And yet, this young organization became an oxymoron and became the most profitable airline in a non-profit making sector. And, I'm sure people will recall the name of the brand, but I'm talking about that example. And the example of that was culture, because the cultures of those two organizations were so different. So for me, the challenge situation, the example came from this and several other hundreds of organizations that I've observed over the years, that what happens in that case is the vision and culture is misaligned. The vision is there that you want to be the best, you want to do whatever you want to state out and move towards. But this culture actually grows outside the vision. And then what the culture ball does, it starts to inhibit the progress of the pyramid. And they are sending energy to the vision to actually start declining in its expectations, declining in its ambition. And slowly and steadily what happens, the culture becomes the enemy of the organization. And before the company realizes it's too late, and even at that stage, you can hire a McKinsey or a BCG, and many companies do that. But even they cannot diagnose it so quickly because every single person in that organization is contributing to the toxicity of the culture of that particular organization. So it's so important. And even when we look back at the organizations that have collapsed worldwide, and some of them were the world's biggest success stories once, you would realize underneath all of it was the seed of culture. And that's why I was in the beginning talking with my other fellow panelists and saying that even when we are not paying attention to culture, the culture is growing or the culture is destroying us. So it's all about how we are playing the role to understand the role that culture plays in our life. So in the challenge situation, actually the culture becomes the enemy. And so that was very powerful learning for me, that how culture can be our friend and the culture can also become our enemy. And that was the realization that I put forth in my book, and I actually talked about it. And in reality, most often our organizations are always aimed at getting a great, people strategy in place. And I think most often when we go for our strategy roadshows and we go for our strategy meetings, we always talk about strategy more importantly than culture. And Peter Drucker was, I think, the first person in the world who said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that's a reality, because if you really ask me, strategy is a sum total of actions. You can put together an action plan, but you cannot put together the behavior, the attitude, and the mindset and the biases, conscious and unconscious bias of people together. You can only touch these 4 elements when you have the culture to do something about it. So that is the very, very important part that I wanted to bring forth. I think I'm gonna now move towards the last 2 very important factors of what I wanted to talk about, because we spoke about leadership style. And I said that leadership styles actually in my mind are the most powerful contributors to culture. I think all organizations must really look in and ask themselves, are our leaders autocratic? Are our leaders democratic, empowering? Are they servant leaders, situational leaders? Because all of these styles are contributing to the culture. What's the degree of delegation and empowerment exercised by our leaders? What's the freedom of expression? What's the style of expression in the organization? What's the preferred mode of internal communication? Is it top down? Is it bottom up? Or is it a combination of both? Obviously, the combination of both is the best way. What's the leader's approach to market? When leaders are very aggressive, mostly the organizations become aggressive. When leaders are not at all aggressive, the entire organization becomes not aggressive. So what's the right style and what's the current style and approach of the leaders? Are they meticulous or are they performing with a combination of the two? Another interesting thing I noticed was, are the leaders driven with a short-term mindset or a mid-term mindset or a long-term? Even though I believe that the new long-term now is 1 year, because no longer are those 5 years strategies, because you really don't know, because none of us could have planned for Corona, but it happened. And, it taught us all a lot that we didn't want to learn. And actually it forced us to learn. So I think still, what's their outlook towards what's the immediate goals, what's the short-term goals and mid-term goals, and moving forward, are they bureaucrat? Are they driven by a legacy benchmark-based oriented style, or they are future-oriented, which means they are continuously evolving in line with their people, the kind of people that they are employing, the kind of customer base they are serving. Like I did a very interesting stint of 6 years with a retailer. And I think their biggest shift, because that company was in the same culture of retail, wherein the earlier mindset was, we get the best product, we give the best quality, we give the best environment in a shop, people will come. And that suddenly changed, that people were not coming. You were providing the best of everything, people were not coming. Because the culture hadn't changed. The culture was supposed to change to make it customer oriented. Wherein earlier we were hiring retailers with the mindset of product. Now we are hiring retailers with the mindset of customer. Because we have to understand our competition is with the experience industry. The service industry is the experience industry, the hotels, the restaurants. When the customer goes there, he goes there for an experience. And same is the case that when they are coming to a retail outlet, it's all about the experience that we offer, which actually inculcates in their style to buy something, or inculcates and inspires them to buy something from us, rather than the other way around, that we have the best product, that's why people are coming. So I think those shifts are also driven by culture, and very, very importantly so. Another thing was that, are our leaders aligned with what's changing in the world and the markets around us? Are they really bringing that knowledge and interface inside the organization or not? And lastly, one thing very interestingly that I noticed in my at least 20 years journey was that many a times your markets and companies that you're serving are changing. But because you have been very successful for very long, we become very arrogant to take note of that. And success, I always say, and I've said that in my book, that success is a very bad coach and failure is a great teacher, because success doesn't teach us anything. Success actually makes us repeat the formula. And that's the problem with success, that, all of us get, become victim of success, and we keep trying the same things. And that's anti-culture. That's anti-culture, because you are making the culture also orient towards success. You're not making culture oriented towards excellence, because excellence may require discomfort. Excellence may require preparation, participation, training and development. And culture change requires all these things. Innovation, sometimes who wants to get up from his favorite chair and do something in an office environment, but at the end of the day, getting up from the chair is not only a daily habit, it's actually a step moving towards something new. So, so those are the things that I wanted to talk about. I would like to now end with something that I've always, felt very strongly about. The last part that I wanted to end with, and that's where I leave with some thought that, at the end of the day, I think when we all, and I'm sure my esteemed panelists will agree with me, that when we all were grooming ourselves to be professionals, we were always asking this question: what does an organization really want? And I think there were three things always, at least to my mind, and I'm sure they will not have very different views on this. One was superior wealth creation for shareholders, investors, senior leaders, and other key stakeholders. The second was superior engagement and experience for employees, customers, suppliers, and whoever is associated with your company. And I think the third would be superior brand and reputation. That when you go to the market, people recognize your company, people recognize your brand. And there is a social brand, there is a market brand, there's an employer brand. And all these very important stakes that we create over our years in the organization is actually driven by culture. And if you really pin down any of these three, break them down, dissect also, you will realize it's not happening. If you are very successful with these three things, it's not because of the vision. While the vision is required, because how do you know where you have to go? But it's the culture which is driving these three things, not the vision. Vision gives you a clarity of thought. Vision gives you a path. But it's the culture which will determine whether you continue to walk that path successfully or not. So I think culture, it's high time that we as CHROs and we as HR leaders, and that's why I even said in my book that CHROs are the new CCOs, Chief Culture Officers, because it's very important for us to bring recognition to the focus on culture and bring the shine and the limelight back on culture and make it get noticed in the boardroom with the same value that I think we three and other our fraternity and folks would really give it. Thank you so much for patient listening. I really enjoyed talking to all of you. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
And I think, Ashutosh, we at least got a prefix of your book, what it talks about, and it was an amazing sharing done by you. I think a lot to learn, and very valid, very prominent points that you have raised. And absolutely, when we talk about the relationship between culture and vision, I think if a person starts a new company, maybe just a 3-member organization to start with, initially vision would be really important. Probably a single individual or 2 people, for them defining a culture would not be a priority at the beginning because they all are so well aligned. But vision becomes the first priority, where they say that this is where we want to see ourselves, or this is what we want to do. Now, the pillars that you spoke about, Ashutosh has mentioned in his book as well, be it values or mission or vision, once these things are defined at the right time as per the requirement, I think, we talk about a driver in the bus or a driver in a car, everybody is seated at a right place. But somebody who is driving the car and ensuring that everybody reaches the defined destination at the right time probably is the culture. Because if it is defined, moderated well in the system, everybody knows that which direction we are walking towards and what is the intent. The why has been clearly defined, how we all will reach there, what all things will be required for all of us to work together and ensure that the deliverables are given on time. All these things probably are part of the culture. Now, one thing that I have been listening a lot from many of us in the industry is, there is organization's culture. I would say yes, which is right. Organizational vision is defined and so is the culture. But to me, I think the culture is also defined in 3 phases. One is the organization's point of view, that this is the culture we want to talk about. So Google has a culture, Capgemini has a culture, and they would say this is the culture of the organization. And when a person is leaving or joining the organization, they would say the culture is good or bad. The second is the culture is also created within the organization by the manager. So a small example I'll give, and I've quoted it a couple of times. So there is same manager and he has a team of say 8 members, and a female walks up to him and says that, I'm going on a maternity leave and I'll be back soon. 9 months is the maternity leave, and maybe I'll need an extension of 15-16 days. And the manager would say, no, that's okay. I understand your situation. You've been always performing really well. And if you extend it for 3 more months, you don't worry about your place in the organization. You will always have work. So take your time, settle things at your place, and come back. If anybody would ever check with that female, how's the culture of the organization, she would say that's the best organization to work for. Now, the same individual, the same manager, the other person walks into him and says, I've been working really hard and I just want to take a break and would want to go to Goa with my friends for 3 days. And the manager would say, don't you think Diwali is coming up and we have so much to finish? And you are really thinking of going to Goa just for fun? And why can't you just stay? Because we want you to extend maybe extra hours. After Diwali, we will talk about it. There's still no clarity whether you can go or not. We'll talk about it. Imagine that person going out and discussing with friends, or somebody would say, do you think I should join the organization? You would say, no, the culture is really bad. Now imagine if the vision of the company has been clearly defined, if the vision for that particular project or team has been very clearly defined, but if such things are happening, and genuinely we cannot blame the manager, because maternity leave, he has probably thought that she may extend and I may be able to help because of her past performance. And for this individual, he may have thought that he would understand that extension is needed at this point in time, and later I may give 6 days break as well. But the definition of culture, it keeps changing. Today, I may be great to my team because everything in and around me is happening in such a beautiful manner. Tomorrow, if a lot of things are hampering my mood and my mindset, probably the culture defined for new entrants tomorrow would be different because of the way Ankita reacted. So I feel the correlation as well as the variance is very high when we talk about organizational culture, because it's not just the organization which would put values in place, which would put processes in place, which would be very empathetic and caring towards the employees and their well-being. It's also about what we are dealing with on daily basis, and the mood of the organization, the mood of the leaders, the people managers, as well as the individuals in the organization, which would keep tweaking the culture of the organization on daily basis, and it would directly impact the vision of the company as well as the individuals. So I think that's quite clear and quite a relatable or linear equation, I would say, when we talk about the culture and vision correlation. And do we have a solution? Can we say that yes, the culture of the organization today is amazing and it would remain same for 20 odd years? Probably it is difficult. We've been talking about Tata's for their culture, for their senior management or leaders, the way they talk, the way they contribute to the society. But do you see the same kind of stories for the entire leadership chain, or do you see it only for 2 people in those organizations? So I think to conclude, I would say vision also gets defined at a multiple level, and similarly the culture also gets defined, braked, maintained, molded at different levels, and the correlation or relation is very strong, but that would keep variating. HR as a group has a very strong role to play, where instead of taking it as a generic approach for the entire organization, they have to identify those pockets that where what kind of culture is required, who is leading the team, how that individual is leading the team, and how or what can be modified so that culture can be balanced, and at the same time vision that has been already defined for the organization or that project can be attained well at the right time. So that's my input to start with. Thanks. Shishir, over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Ankita and Ash, for sharing your views. And I would say I couldn't agree more than what you both have shared. I mean, in terms of my thoughts, especially around how do we build culture, and whose role is basically to whether who's a driver, who's a passenger in this whole journey. I think for me, specifically, around the culture, I would say, while I completely agree that the leadership team, the founding members, and the people at the top needs to kind of define that this is how we want to build the organization. But I think one important thing I always feel that while we set the framework, we set the tone of the organization, but I also feel that okay, it is actually a two-way process. It's not just the top down saying okay, this is what we want to build in the organization and this is how we will do, this is the culture of the organization. I think we should always pay attention to what's happening, like Ash very rightly said, the ball, right, the culture ball. So we definitely need to sort of continuously pay attention and be very very wary of what's happening in the on the actual on the ground, right? And if you pay attention, you will start seeing that that while we think that okay, this is how we want to drive, but there are certain elements which probably maybe leadership team may be aware or not aware. Sometimes it happens, right? So there's a different set of bit of a practice or culture that is starting to brew, which also is healthy, and then that could also become the part of the overall vision and the culture of the organization. And I think we need to really constantly keep seeing that. For example, if I say let's say talk about if it is not a hospitality, let's say some manufacturing, right, or say a very heavy duty industry, right? If we provide a work-life balance, or say we provide this thing, there are those industry which probably may not be able to kind of have those. But while everybody talks about work-life balance, everybody talks about mental health and all of those things, right? As a company we do, but in that industry the nature of the work itself is not conducive to kind of provide that kind of build that kind of a culture. Having said that, you can do other stuff, right? So but what else that we can do as build that in terms of the overall culture? I think I feel that information from the bottoms up as well is important, and then constantly leadership needs to keep an eye on it, and then let's say alter it and relook at it, or say sort of evaluate that okay, what is this something which is really really good and which is helping the business and the organization to be better at it. I think we should be absolutely ready to sort of adopt and reshape the culture of the organization. So that's basically what I believe that is also very 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 important in terms of the overall especially when you're building the culture. Of course, I going back to the point on the what's the leadership role. 100% agree that leadership does have a very very important role, and every single action, every single walk the talk, how do you treat, like Dr. Ankita has very very beautifully narrated that same company, same manager, two different situation, and the scenario changes, right? One thinks that okay, it's a great company, it's a great culture, very supportive, very empathetic, and so on, and the other employee says okay, no, I think this manager is not really giving me that due respect or due holidays or whatever, that it can change. So but we do as our role from a leadership perspective, as a HR perspective, I think we need to sort of also kind of help be the torch bearer and say that okay, in this kind of situation, how do you kind of do the same thing but maybe in a different way, that the employee feels much more appreciated still, while he may not get the desired result at that moment. But how can how we can coach them, how can we mentor them to kind of keep the ethos of the culture and the organization similar, while the messaging may be slightly the outcome may be slightly different at that point in time. So I mean, these are some of my thoughts around the culture and how we basically manage this.
Excellent. And I think, first of all, great points, Dr. Ankita, and great points, Shishir. I loved listening to both of you. And I was thinking of a couple of questions because with your experiences in the industry and different industries, obviously, I have had my experiences, and I'm going to narrate one incident wherein there was this very powerful manager in one of my businesses in a very large country in Middle East. He was a star boy, loved by everyone, delivered revenues, delivered numbers, etc., etc. And one fine day, a complaint came about him that he is actually asking for sexual favors. And that's a pretty offensive complaint. And we investigated and we realized that this individual, because of his success, had somewhat become larger than the country. There was a country manager, there was a country management team, but this individual got away with these things at a smaller level, and people noticed and ignored because he was the numbers man, and everyone got what they wanted from him. And at the stage where I got involved, I without taking names, there were a lot of CXOs who told me, "Don't get into this mess." But I was very clear that if he has done it, he should pay the price. And I think I had a last interview with him, and I sacked him. And we realized that he made that mistake. And when I sacked him, there were a lot of issues that were raised because there was no replacement ready, stuff like that. When people become more important than the role. And but we stood our ground as an HR team. And eventually, 6 months later on, the board realized that we made the right stand, and we took the right stand because they realized the value of it. But trust me, those 6 months were hell. I can say that because every day I had to stand up for my decision. And how would you like to deal with something like this? And I'm sure you both have had your own experiences of dealing with something like this.
I have a very, very similar experiences as well. Back and again, I'm not going to take the name, but this was, a very slightly senior person, who's, I was working in that tech company, organization, and one team, they did some, fraud or, like paying the, this, you have these income tax bills, etc., right? Which is, you can take the bit of a reduced tax overall. So, you pay this HRA and the medical reimbursement, etc. And we realized that a lot of employees were doing so, taking these bills from the medical chemist shops, and they didn't even had a driver, and then producing the fake bill. And we did a whole investigation and realized that okay, there are these quite a number of things employees are doing it, and which is not good as a practice, because you are under compliances and law, right? So we did a whole investigation, and I had this decision to make that one member, a similar level, both of the managers, and one coming from the technology and one coming from the sales guy, right? Sales guy, very straightforward. He committed. He stood up his hand saying, "Okay, I messed up. Your call as an organization. I'm okay to be punished, whatever it is." And the other one on the engineering side, the technology side, this guy was just sort of going around the circle. He was trying to prove that okay, he has not done anything, or we have not given him clarity on basically all 20,000 different types of excuses that he came up with. And then similarly, like you rightly said, the similarly immense pressure, from the the headquarter and also other, this particular employee is extremely critical for the success of the business, and we cannot do it. Can we give him a warning letter, and so on and so forth. And while this was happening, and we already decided that the other sales guy we have to terminate because it was unethical as a living up to the company's core DNA and the culture of the organization, we had to sack him. And we said, okay, we will terminate you. And now it was, for me, it was two things, because both of them did similar mistakes. One was very straightforward, no mincing words, raised his hand saying, okay, I messed up. We didn't had a clear communication, but I still do not shy away from taking my responsibility that, I did wrong. And the one on the other side is the guy who's not really taking the ownership. He's just trying to, make create more stories and confusing, to just sort of see if he can get away with that. I had to really stood up and said, okay, both needs to go, because one, that they are at a fairly senior level. If it is a junior person, fine, we could look at it because we didn't provide the enough communication. And so much of pressure, close to about 1 month, it was going back and forth. And then I had to say that okay, I'm open. You please tell me, as a leadership team, please tell me that what should I go and tell the sales guy. If he asks me that, am I being fair to him? Because one way you're saving one person because for whatever criticality, and one way that you're not letting somebody go. So eventually, we did terminated both of them. And to be very honest, if you ask my view today, if I look back, if I have to, if I had to choose somebody to kind of save, or not save, but let's say take a little bit lesser punishment, I would have actually saved, or I would have given a warning letter to the sales guy rather than the engineering guy. Because for me, what was striking difference was that one is still not accepting the facts, and one was just like, just being very, very transparent, accepts the mistakes. So that's a very mature leadership and mature owning that, what mistakes that he did. So that's how I would deal with similar situations if I come back again. That's my thought.
Yeah, I can't, connect more than what you've already shared. I think similar situations are arising in every organization. One thing I feel, or what I have witnessed, that in a lot of organizations, I think including mine, initially we always kept culture as a separate entity. We always thought that we would be able to build things on culture, and it would not impact business or numbers that directly, which is so untrue, because we've been talking about return on investment, but nobody's talking on return on expectation as such. So ROE is missing from a lot of factors. Now imagine, when I heard both the cases, and I have a similar one, but I think it would be more of a repetition. Imagine a person is really critical for the business, and the day one when the complaint is sent to the seniors, instead of being immediately fair and taking decision, we get into a habit of evaluating how critical that individual is in the organization. And be it harassment cases, or be it misbehaviors with the team members, or any such case that has come up, I have always seen this issue when the head of the department or somebody from the exec team would say, but fine, Ankita, if today I release him, who will take care of his profile, right? Can we at least give this thing a little more time? Can you at least talk to the other person and see if this can be settled? Now we cannot question them ethically. Obviously, it's not right. But imagine you being at wherever we are at HR's end. Can you just go and say that no, I want this person to be out of the organization right away? That's physically, practically not possible. So the culture definition, or how we are actually handling, or how we are defining the culture of the organization, is dependent on leaders at these junctions, or the stories that you guys just shared. And if at all we are failing, and we feel that this was just between five of us, it is never that case. Actually, within 3 days, it will be with anybody and everybody in the system, and they would be saying that the system is being unfair to these individuals, and which directly impacts our resignations, attritions, joining ratio, which will further impact our business, and a lot of people taking leaves and looking out for jobs. So though the situational impact is where we find ourselves stuck, but I don't know what could be the solution, or what could be the way to find answers to such cases, and how do we end up managing these things well. But culture and vision, a lot of people don't talk about, Ash. Probably this is one of the reasons, because there is no clear-cut equation where you can say X plus Y is equal to Z. Every day, business will throw those numbers, those scenarios, and they will say, adjust, don't close it today. And I think that clearly states that why the relationship is so strong, why it is so directly proportionate to each other, because it is impacting in all possible manner.
And I think I couldn't disagree with you, because you picked up some very valuable nuances, because even I have gone through those situations in my life where the fundamentals of the business at times, in terms of expectations, returns, expectations from a job from an individual, are at a counterpoint. So one of the things that I personally have always believed in, and I started experimenting with it, is the definition of right behavior and wrong behavior. Even though you cannot quantify everything, it's impossible. There will always be thousands of behaviors. But at least define paradigm of the repeat issues that you deal with. and then have a very transparent communication run through the organization, wherein you clearly articulate that, these are some 10 or 11 behaviors which are actually unacceptable at all, coming from a star performer or from me or from the MD or from the board or from anyone. And I think if it comes from the board, I have personally done that, and I've done that twice. I think it sends a very strong message. I also believe that, culture becomes very strongly represented when one of the founder members or one of the board members is involved in it. And I think that really, really drives the message of whatever you're trying to, seriously inspire people to believe in. Because as you rightly said, and, HR is one of the most toughest battles in such situations, wherein you have to look at the P&L, you have to look at the culture, and you have to look at the leader who is your colleague, and he or she may feel betrayed because you didn't listen to that idea. So how do you manage this conflict of interest at various levels? So I have come across the best solution is when you give the culture mental to the board, and they start talking about this. So one of the things that we very interestingly did, and I'm sure you've heard of nowadays, there is this very interesting dashboard that comes out with a lot of AI products that are coming in. I'm forgetting the name of the product. And it has a measure, net promoter score, I'm sure both of you are aware of very well. So we started doing this Friday net promoter score, and we used to ask them only 2 questions. Are you excited about coming on Monday? And the second question was, do you want to be in the same team? So it was a crazy idea. And we said, before people leave, let's get this answer from them. And every weekend we used to collect the data. Trust me, if you do it at a period and you keep measuring it, you see a pattern. And that pattern tells you who are bad managers in terms of people and who are great managers in terms of people. And it tells you which functions, which teams in your organization are very happy, which teams and which functions in your team organization are not happy at all. And at least in our case, the case became very relevant for the board, because we could highlight the performance of those teams in terms of expectations. When these two were matched, we saw the disengaged teams were delivering bad performances, engaged teams were delivering better performances. And just 2 questions asked in net promoter scores, rank it on a scale of 1 to 10. So I think with technology, I think some of the issues that we 3 have faced in our life, and I think at least 15 years of our life, maybe now is at times I feel we should be CHROs now, not 15 years back, because that was the toughest years to battle it, when you didn't have solution to support you. Because how do you bring intelligence to tell the board that, guys, this is the right way to do things, don't do this, so that's, I think, very interesting. So last question to both of you, and I think I'm done with what I wanted to understand. How important do you think is AI? Because a lot of noise is coming from people around the globe that AI is actually counterproductive because people may lose jobs. I have my own take on AI, but I didn't want to speak about that. But I wanted to understand your take. Can it be a semblance? Can it be a marriage between what we are trying to achieve in culture with AI supporting it? Is that a possibility? Any one of you can take, one by one. Any one of you.
Dr. Ankita, you want to go?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. I mean, I am generally, I would say I'm, technology believer, and I like to sort of, get, as an HR more digitally driven as a company. So I'm definitely a believer of that. Okay, yes, AI, some of those things can support and solve some of the problem, but I don't think it is 100%, let's say, replaceable, or you can just change completely. I think it needs to be really marry very nicely. So for example, when it comes to data, information, etc., using that into really actionable stuff on the ground to kind of implement. I think that's where I would say, because a lot of time we of course gut feel is important, and you connect with people, take feedback, etc. But at the same time, sometimes it does have biases, sometimes it does have perceptions attached to that, and data speaks, not everything, but at least let's say 60-70% overall. So I would say if it can be really married, the data as well as so digitization as well as the human part of it. I think it's definitely is helpful. Overall, I think that's my view.
Great. I think, yeah, I would agree, because it is not this or this, it has to be this and this. So when we are talking about, as you also covered, Shishir also mentioned, that when we talk about culture, now we want to understand daily pulses, right? And when you're talking about individual teams, we are creating those pockets that where is the problem? Which are the teams where we need to really identify and we need to focus? Who are the managers who are not doing it right? Who are the managers who are already great and we shouldn't be bothering them with trainings and other stuff, just to ensure that they pick up really fast. Now imagine we doing, as in the entire team, just collecting data. Probably by the time we derive what we want to do and we put a plan in place, things would have already changed. A lot of people would have left the organization, probably manager would have got changed, projects shifting, so many things happen. Why we are able to do it on daily basis? A lot of organizations, they do not completely rely on it, but what they do, before you start your day, you have to, like your two questions similarly, do you want to have a working day today? How do you feel? And when you wind up for the day, how was your day? And any two things that you're not feeling good about, or any two things that you feel good about. Those things which are collected on daily basis, those pockets which are identified on daily basis, those issues which probably are addressed on weekly and quarterly basis, these things are possible because we have technology supporting all our initiatives. And without it, we were doing, if you talk about processes, technology and people, when technology was not there, people and processes still existed. But probably the pace at which we are changing things has emerged really well, and we quickly make decisions, we quickly adapt to the system because data is ready. So I think, yeah, it's a must. We would not be able to do away technology. We will not be able to survive if AI or other tools are not there to support our intent.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. And it was a pleasure talking to you after a long number of years, Dr. Ankita.
I know.
Shishir, nice getting introduced to you. And I believe both of you are doing a remarkable job. Thank you so much for coming on the panel, and thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ashutosh and Dr. Ankita. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I learned a lot. Some of the very insightful information that I got, and I really loved your Friday mood checking initiative, and I'm sure some of those things would definitely like to implement that into my organization and make the organization better. That's what we care for, right? So, and then same with Dr. Ankita. Interesting topics and interesting insight thoughts that you've shared. Pleasure to speaking with you guys.
See you guys again sometime soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.